From the redwood forests to the desert sands, the indigenous peoples of the U.S. West Coast. Picture standing under the immense canopy of a coastal redwood, its branches stretching into the sky, or envision the vast, arid desert where life seems scarce, yet an ancient and resilient people once thrived. Long before modern cities and highways shaped the landscape, the west coast of the United States, from Washington to California and beyond, was home to a tapestry of indigenous cultures, each as diverse as the environments they inhabited. The peoples of these lands had their own sophisticated systems of government, sustainable agricultural methods, and spiritual beliefs that connected them deeply to the natural world. Their ways of life were not only a testament to human adaptability and ingenuity, but also a reflection of their profound respect for the earth. Yet, their story is not without conflict, loss, and hardship, brought about by European colonization. Today, we explore the rich histories of the West Coast tribes, celebrating their traditions and acknowledging the profound challenges they faced and continue to face. The rich cultures of the Pacific Northwest. The indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, from present-day Washington to Oregon, are known for their deep connection to the sea and forests. Tribes such as the Tlingit, Haida, Chinook, and Salish developed complex societies that revolved around the natural abundance of their region. The Pacific Ocean, teeming with fish, particularly salmon, played a central role in their daily lives. These tribes mastered the art of fishing, creating technologies and techniques that allowed them to harvest and preserve large quantities of fish, securing their survival through harsh winters. Equally impressive was their craftsmanship, particularly in woodworking. Using the massive cedar trees of the region, the Pacific Northwest tribes built large longhouses and carved intricate totem poles that told stories of their ancestry and beliefs. Potlatch ceremonies, which are elaborate feasts where wealth was redistributed and stories were shared, were a cornerstone of their social structure. These events solidified alliances, transferred leadership, and allowed the people to celebrate their connection to each other and the land. However, with the arrival of European settlers in the 18th century, this balance was shattered. Diseases like smallpox decimated native populations, and the encroachment of settlers disrupted the tribe's way of life. By the 19th century, the fur trade, the rush for resources and treaties, many of which were broken, led to displacement and hardship for these tribes. California, a land of diversity and displacement. California's indigenous peoples represent some of the most linguistically and culturally diverse groups in North America. Over 100 distinct tribes once lived in the state, from the coastal Chumash to the inland Miwok and Yurok tribes. These communities were deeply tied to the land, practicing sustainable agriculture, hunting, and gathering techniques. Acorns, for example, were a dietary staple, and tribes developed intricate methods for harvesting, processing, and storing them. The Chumash, located near the Southern California coast, were exceptional seafarers, known for building tomols, which are plank canoes that enabled them to traverse the Pacific, connecting island communities and facilitating trade. Meanwhile, the Pomo people of Northern California were renowned for their fine basket weaving, creating baskets so tightly woven that they could hold water. But California's indigenous peoples suffered immensely under European colonization. The Spanish missions, which began in the late 1700s, forcibly converted and enslaved thousands of Native Americans, subjecting them to brutal labor conditions while stripping them of their cultural identities. The discovery of gold in 1848 further exacerbated their plight. The California Gold Rush brought an influx of settlers who encroached on Native American lands, leading to violence, massacres, and the outright theft of indigenous territory. The desert tribes. Survival in harsh climates. Further inland, tribes like the Paiute, Shoshone, and Cahuilla thrived in the arid environments of the Great Basin and Southern California deserts. Though their landscapes may have appeared barren, these tribes developed ingenious methods to survive in some of the harshest conditions imaginable. The Paiute were experts in irrigation, creating systems that allowed them to grow crops like corn and beans, even in dry regions. They also practiced sustainable harvesting of wild plants, such as pinon nuts and berries, which were critical food sources. The Shoshone, who ranged from the Rocky Mountains to California, were highly mobile, relying on hunting and foraging. The introduction of horses by the Spanish revolutionized their way of life, allowing them to travel greater distances and hunt buffalo more effectively. This shift gave rise to a more nomadic lifestyle, with horses becoming a symbol of wealth and status within the tribe. Like other Native American groups, the desert tribes faced tremendous challenges with the expansion of European settlers. As the U.S. government pushed westward, many of these tribes were forced onto reservations, where their traditional ways of life became difficult to sustain. The loss of land, coupled with the imposition of new agricultural and cultural practices, left many indigenous groups struggling to maintain their identities. The resilience and revival of West Coast tribes. Despite centuries of oppression, displacement, and attempts to erase their cultures, the indigenous peoples of the West Coast have shown remarkable resilience. Today, many tribes are engaged in efforts to revive their languages, traditions, and lands. Programs focused on language revitalization, cultural education, and environmental stewardship are helping younger generations reconnect with their heritage. In the Pacific Northwest, tribes continue to celebrate potlatch ceremonies and carve totem poles, honoring their ancestors and keeping their stories alive. California tribes are revitalizing traditional crafts like basket weaving and reestablishing rights to fish in ancestral waters. Many West Coast tribes are also leading efforts to restore and protect natural ecosystems, working to undo some of the environmental damage caused by colonization. The dark legacy of colonization. It is impossible to discuss the history of Native Americans on the West Coast without acknowledging the darker aspects of this history. The arrival of European settlers brought with it disease, violence, and forced assimilation. Entire communities were wiped out, and centuries-old traditions were nearly lost. The mission system in California, the impact of the gold rush, and the U.S. government's policies of relocation and cultural suppression led to significant trauma that continues to affect indigenous communities today. Yet, through it all, the West Coast tribes have endured. They have fought for the return of their lands, the recognition of their rights, and the preservation of their cultures. Their resilience is a testament to the strength of their communities and their enduring connection to the land. As we reflect on the history and culture of the West Coast tribes, it is worth asking ourselves, how can we honor the wisdom of indigenous peoples and apply their teachings of environmental stewardship and communal living in a world that faces increasing ecological and social challenges? The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. Chief Seattle, Suquamish, and Duwamish. We are the land. To the best of my understanding, that is the fundamental idea that permeates Native American life. Polygon Allen, Laguna Pueblo. When you take a look at our past, we were self-sufficient people. We lived off the land and had everything we needed. Ben Nighthorse. Campbell, Northern Cheyenne. The question invites us to reflect not only on the past, but also on how we can learn from indigenous knowledge to build a more sustainable and connected future.